Hi everyone, my name is Bilal Hussain. I work for Amnesty International, and I'm the project manager for Football Welcomes, and I'm going to be hosting today's event. Today's event is a joint event between Amnesty International UK and the National Football Museum, and it will be a panel discussion to think about how we can be ensuring that football is welcoming for refugees all year round. Um, and just before I do that, I just wanted to introduce the two organisations that are putting this event on. Then I'll hand it over to the panelists to introduce themselves and tell you a bit more about their work and what they do. And then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So do please familiarise yourself with the chat in the bottom right. And please do use the chat to introduce yourselves now as well. I mean, I can see there's already some conversation about the Euros going on, which is wonderful. Hopefully it's coming home. I mean, having seen France and Italy, probably not, but hey, fingers crossed it is. But without much further ado, then, so the National Football Museum strives to explore the impact of football on all of our lives and how it shapes our identities. Football is the nation's sport, the most watched sport, the most participated in, and the most written about. It can be a force for positive cultural and societal change, and that's what the National Football Museum is about. How we ensure that football is that positive and cultural change, and that's also what Football Welcomes is about. So, Football Welcomes is an initiative of Amnesty International UK. It uses football as a vehicle to create more welcoming communities for refugees. The Football Welcomes Project has done this year on year, engaging hundreds of football clubs to put on events and activities with refugees and people seeking asylum for its Football Welcomes weekends. And this panel event is going to be followed by a Q&A about how we can use the power of football to create welcoming communities all year round. We would also like to introduce you to each of the panelists so that the panelists can give themselves and their work a brief introduction. So starting from, I think Anwar's above me on the screen. Above me is Anwar Uddin. Anwar is the Diversity and Campaigns Manager at the Football Supporters Association and the first British Asian footballer and football player to captain a club in the Football League. And then we've got Kevin Coleman. Kevin Coleman is the head of diversity and inclusion at Brentford FC, who have just been promoted to the Premier League. And I'm sure a large portion of that was due to Kevin personally. And then we've got Naomi Westland, who founded the Football Welcomes Initiative at Amnesty International UK and has seen it through all of its growth. Naomi started the initiative with 10 clubs back in 2017, and as of the year before last, there was over 200. No, there were nearly 200 clubs participating. And then last, but in certainly no way least, we've got Comfort Etim, who is a former Tottenham Hotspur women's player and is the captain of Amnesty FC, which is a refugees and asylum seeking football team based in Liverpool. And so, without further ado, I would love to introduce or let all of the panelists introduce themselves. So, Anwar, over to you. You've got 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when your time's up.
Wow, you put me on a time. That's pressure, but it's a good thing because I am known to go on for a while. But no, listen. It's fantastic to be here. I've supported Football Welcomes since its infancy, and something I feel very, very passionate about. A little bit about me. I am the Diversity and Campaigns Manager for the Football Supporters Association. I lead on the Fans for Diversity campaign, which we run in partnership with Kick It Out. I'm an ex-football player. I was, as you said, one of the first British Asians to play mainstream football in the UK. I signed for West Ham United at the tender age of 13, which seems like a million years ago. And I was there for 7 years playing with world-class players like Joe Cole, Rio Ferdinand, Frank Lampard. I had a 17-year career playing from the Premier League all the way down into non-league. And obviously a unique perspective because I was one of very few British Asians to play football in this country. And I was always asked from the age of 17 when I signed my first Premier League contract in 1997, Anwar, why is there such a lack of Asian representation in football? 20 years later, I'm still asked exactly the same question. So when I retired, I felt really strongly about working towards positive change. I'm currently the assistant manager at Aldershot. I've got my A-licensed coaching badge and I went into coaching. But I felt like if we want positive change, you need to be the change. So I volunteered for the FA, Kick It Out, Show Racing the Red Card, the PFA. I was going around the country delivering workshops around anti-racism. And I applied for the role at the Football Supporters Association to create Fans for Diversity. And 6 years later, the campaign is all about working with fans to make football as inclusive as possible. We have done well over 200 pro-diversity events and activities. We've created around 80 new supporter groups from underrepresented groups. That includes the LGBTQ plus community, the South Asian community, the elderly community. We've produced thousands of pro-diversity resources, from banners to air fresheners to caps and t-shirts. And what's really proud for me is that we're responsible for literally thousands of people from underrepresented communities, including refugees and asylum seekers, who have actually gone and experienced a match day at their local club or gone and watched a game at England. There are so many people in this country that absolutely love football. They love everything about it. But unfortunately, like my father who came here in the 60s, their relationship is a TV relationship. They watch football on TV because it's a safe way to do so. And there's a massive fear attached to the game. That's something we want to change. We want to encourage everyone to really get involved in the game, be able to get involved in your local club, watch Premier League football, Champions League football, Championship League 1 and 2, even non-league football. And I feel like football has that magic thing about it where it gives you that sense of belonging. And the reason why supporting Football Welcomes means so much to me is because I feel that football clubs can be the hub of every single community. If you live in London, if you live in Blackburn, if you live in any part of the country, you love the game, a football club can be a part of where you go and integrate and feel part of the community, have something in common with everyone else who lives in a local area. And it really, really gives me great satisfaction that so many clubs are now supporting Football Welcomes, are acknowledging and raising awareness about the refugee and asylum seeker situation in this country. And I think what Football Welcomes has done has enabled everyone to have that information available to them, because it is a taboo subject, which is, a lot of stigma attached to it. But I think we need to have these conversations. And for me, Football Welcomes has been an amazing project so that I can have a discussion with football clubs and their fan base and say, this is something amazing that you should support, get behind. And I'm so glad that so many football clubs have done exactly that. I'm coming up to 5 minutes now. I'm trying to be precise. I would like to talk a lot more about my football career, but I'm not going to do that because that will take me a hell of a long time. But fantastic to be part of this call today. I've got a great relationship with Amnesty and everyone on the panel. It's a fantastic panel, and I look forward to answering some more questions later on in the show.
Nice one, thank you, Anwar. That was brilliant. You were thrillingly very close to the 5 minutes. So so please don't feel bad at all. Okay, cool. So please do, if you have any questions for Anwar and any of the panelists, please do put them in the chat from now. We'll be scrolling up and down. We've got some questions from beforehand. Anyway, so without further ado, I wanted to bring in Naomi Westland, who was the founder of Football Welcomes. Naomi, please do share your screen and just go for it. Oh, okay. Well, we seem to have some issues with Naomi's video link, so we'll sort that out. In the meantime, I mean, it wouldn't be 2021 if there wasn't technical issues, right? In the meantime, Kevin, can I introduce you, please? Kevin from Brentford FC. Kevin, if you want to unmute and share your screen and give us a bit of an introduction to the work that you do and the work that you do with Football Welcomes, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So yeah, my name's Kevin Coleman. I'm the head of ED&I, Equality, Diversity, Inclusion at Brentford Football Club. To go back, I've worked in sport for just over 20 years. I worked for the LTA governing body of tennis for about 10 years, and then at Kick It Out, Kick Racism Out of Football campaign. And I used to run their grassroots and community work for 5 years, and that was working with county FAs and with communities to capacity build them to link them up with the governing bodies to make sure they were getting as good an experience of the game as everyone else was. Then I moved to the FA. So at the FA, I used my experience from Kick It Out to try and inform the policies at national level. And I was a quality manager at the FA, working with all the county FAs and having specialisms in Asian inclusion, faith and football, and refugees and asylum seekers in football. And I was there for 8 years until the beginning of this year, where I joined Brentford FC. And Brentford now in a Premier League team, there was an opportunity to try and implement all the stuff that I'd learned at the FA and at Kick It Out over the years in a professional club, which was smaller and more agile, and now has a platform in over 190 countries. Specifically around refugees and asylum seekers, I used to run a network of people in England who are interested in supporting refugees through football. And one thing I found that within that sphere, there were two main groups. There were third sector groups like Amnesty or like the British Red Cross, who were really good at supporting refugees throughout their everyday lives, whether it be accessing services or trying to experience the things they were entitled to and not have a really unpleasant experience, but have a good experience of being resettled in England. But the refugees who were within their sphere really wanted to or were interested in football, but those third sector organisations didn't really know how to deliver football. And then on the other end of the scale, you have football clubs, like mine or like the FA, who were great at football, but didn't know anything about supporting refugees. And both sides had really good intentions. So bringing them all together to learn from each other. And over time, you get organisations who understand refugees and also understand football. And when you have those two skills together, you can deliver something really important. The reason football is so important is because it's a global language. It's estimated around a quarter of the world's population has played football at some point. It has more coverage and reach than the Olympics. So everywhere you go, I'll give you an example. When I went on my honeymoon, I got a taxi in Singapore, and the first thing the guy asked me was which Premier League team I support. You can go anywhere in the world and someone will talk to you about football. So it's a global language. It's a way that people can settle anywhere in the world, and you can meet a new friend, speak to someone in your local community about football, and it's a way of bringing people together. On the football field, of course, people are equal. Doesn't matter where you're from, what your background, how rich or poor you are, you're all equal. So it's something that's a really important way of accelerating the principle of football welcomes. And that's it for me.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kevin. That was great. And I mean, lovely to hear that. It's very inspiring. Football's universality is absolutely amazing, and great to know that you honeymooned in Singapore. Must have been amazing.
Yeah, so it was great.
Okay, cool. So what I want to do now is I want to bring in Comfort Etim. Comfort is a former player at Tottenham Hotspur and now plays for Amnesty FC. Comfort, please do introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi, Comfort. I think Bilal is frozen, but we can all hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. It's Bilal's frozen. So carry on.
Amazing. Hello, everyone. So, my name is Comfort. I run a team here in Liverpool for asylum seeking and refugee women. We've been going on for 2 years, and that is something that has been really, I'd say, fun and very interesting for myself and the women. A little background about myself. I think it was said at the beginning, but I used to play football myself. Football was something that runs in the family, my mom being a football coach, and coming to the UK, gone through the asylum process myself, and being where I am now and having the opportunity, I would say a privilege really, to work for the organization that I work for, Refugee Women Connect, which is a charity organization based in Liverpool, and we support refugees, asylum-seeking women, and survivors of human trafficking. And we do various, that is done in different aspects in terms of casework, well-being support, mental health, outreach, advocacy and policy, and basically just general signposting and referral team also. So the ideas all came from, my love for football. The last speaker, sorry, didn't catch me, but said something, Kevin said, football has one language, and, I completely and totally agree, in the sense that I have, grown with learning how to speak English through football, just listening to my teammates. I mean, I'm still learning, but you could tell like the difference if you knew me 18 odd years ago when I was in Tottenham. You would, attest to the fact that I have improved my English skills just, by playing football and meeting friends and socializing. So given the opportunity to work with this amazing women at Refugee Women Connect, and one of my roles was to, signpost and promote health among the women and, empower them in whatever form, and whether in terms of helping them get voluntary roles or just empowering them by doing courses. I thought there was one thing that I knew how to do well, which was football. So I decided to set up a football team. And little did I know that there was going to be another professional football player who was also an asylum seeker then. And that just kickstarted everything. I knew I wanted to do this, had the conversation with my CEO. We had a 12-week pilot, and unfortunately, we could not carry on with Refugee Women Connect FC as it was known there. And, I had no clue, no idea of how to run a football club in the UK. It's not something that I have done before. So I approached a friend who then introduced me to LFC, County FA. I met amazing team there who also have linked me now to the Amnesty International. And they've helped build the team to what it is. We currently have over 20, women in the team, and it is open to all women. We've got students, we've got asylum seekers, we've got refugees, and just normal, just women just coming together basically, and having fun playing football. We play the football welcomes tournaments, the one that we play every month. The women love it. They love it so much. It's so, literally, their feedbacks would just be like, Comfort, when is the next one? Because they enjoy it so much. And again, you would see the smiles on their face because they get to meet new people. It just takes their mind away from whatever they're going through. It's just a safe space for women coming together and just having fun playing football. Some of them have never in their life, experienced kicking a ball. But when they come, it is fun. And just seeing them score goals every session or every other session is just, the highlights of the training session for us. It is Refugee Week. Maybe most of us would know. And, we had a game with St. Helens Council, on Monday. And it was just so beautiful to see these women come together and play 8-a-side for the very first time, not something they've ever experienced. And it was just fantastic. So that is really what I do here in Liverpool. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Comfort. Really, really wonderful stuff there, which is great. So now what I want to do is I want to introduce my colleague, Naomi Westland. Naomi founded Football Welcomes and can talk to us about the story of where it came from and what's behind it and why we started it in the first place. So Naomi, over to you, please. Please do give us a second. I think Naomi is just having technical problems. She'll be with us in a second.
Anwar, do us a song.
Well, I think I'm not too sure Naomi will make it. If she does make it, we'll give her some time. But why don't we just go into the questions and the answers? So I've got a few to kick us off with, and I want to ask this of Kevin in the first instance. Then, so Kevin, what is it about football that can help create more welcoming communities? And then I'll open up to the rest of the panelists.
I think football in general, as I said before, is a universal language. So it's, at every level, whether you're at school, if you look at the stats, boys and girls in primary school, I think around 90% of them regularly play football. In high school, in grassroots clubs in England, there's over 100,000 grassroots teams. And then you've got professionally, as Anwar will tell you, everyone's a fan. So you don't have to be a season ticket holder to be a fan. So it's something which bonds people together. If there's anything that divides people, whether it be Brexit or politics or anything else, people will always come together and bond and have something to talk about when it's football. So it's something where all else fails, or wherever there's division or misinformation, football is something which is a very easy and natural way of bringing people together. So I think it's something where it's not actually about the game, and it's not actually about winning or being good. It's almost something that is a way of helping achieve other objectives. And I think that's pretty simply, that is the main reason that it's so important.
Yeah, brilliant. Anwar, can I bring you in?
Yeah, listen, football has a magical power. I think everyone that's involved in it is involved in it because of that magical power. Myself and Kevin, on behalf of the FA, 2 years ago, went to Bangladesh and went into the Rohingya refugee camp with some balls and bibs. And if you saw the impact that had on hundreds of thousands of people, it was a powerful thing. And that's what football can do. So bring that back to the UK. And I think football in the UK is the biggest thing. It's the biggest thing that brings everyone together. You look at the millions of people that every Tuesday night or at the weekend, on a Saturday or a Sunday, come together or travel up and down the country to watch, support their teams. It's the perfect icebreaker. You don't even need to learn or know the same language. You go to a football pitch, you turn up, there's two people that are from different parts of the world, have no clue what they're talking about, throw a ball in the middle. And that's that common language in it, that common theme that brings us together. So for me, with my work and everything I've done in my life, I've tried to use that magical power to bring people together, use it as an icebreaker, and actually work towards positive change. And I think football has the ability to do that. And I'd like to see more of the game have that kind of ethos and that kind of philosophy. Let's use what's our biggest asset in this country to try to help put some of the biggest issues right.
Absolutely. Comfort, did you have any thoughts on that? Oh, Comfort, you muted.
Oh yeah, okay. No, just completely nodding in, and agreeing to everything that has been said, that football's got one language and it has the power to bring people from all over the world together. It's one game that everyone has an understanding, and it's so beautiful to see the power that football has in terms of connecting people together.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So I think we're now joined by Naomi. Naomi, if you're still here, please do unmute yourself and just give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and Football Welcomes as a project.
Hi everyone. It's really nice to be here, and I'm really sorry about the technical issues. It's hard to believe that nearly a year and a half into doing everything online, and we're still having problems. So really sorry, and thank you for your patience. So I work with Bilal at Amnesty UK, and in 2017, I was working on our Global Refugees campaign. I worked in the press office. I was working on our global refugees campaign called I Welcome. And one really important strand of that campaign was around creating more welcoming communities for refugees and people seeking asylum. And so we were thinking about how, as Amnesty, we might be able to achieve that. And I was aware of an anniversary that was coming up in sort of April, May of 2017, when it was going to be the 80th anniversary of the arrival in the UK of some of the first refugees to play professional football here. And they were child refugees from the Spanish Civil War who came over to the UK from Bilbao to Southampton in May 1937. You know your Spanish Civil War history. They came after the bombing of Guernica. It's a really interesting story. It's not very well known, but if you want to know more, have a little Google around and you'll be able to find out some more information. Anyway, what happened was most of these, there were around 4,000 children on this boat. Most ended up going home, but around between 250 and 400 stayed. And of them, 6 of the boys went on to become professional footballers here. So what we wanted to do was celebrate the contribution that they made to football back then, 80 years previously, and also celebrate the contribution that refugees have continued to make to the game since then. And to think about like football clubs as being at the heart of their communities and being really influential in their communities, and therefore important partners for us in helping to achieve more welcoming communities. So what did we do? We created essentially a day of action where we invited football clubs to put on events and activities over one weekend in April 2017 with refugees and people seeking asylum living locally, working with other local organisations, refugee organisations, local councils, whoever they needed to work with, to put on events and activities with and for refugees in their communities. We hadn't worked with football clubs before. We didn't know what the response was going to be. You know, there were quite a few people who thought football clubs won't go for this. They're going to think it's too controversial. They'll be worried about what the reaction from their fans. And the opposite happened. So we thought, okay, we'll try and get 10. That's a good number around the country. We ended up in that first year with 30 clubs participating all over the country. When we did it again in 2018, we had 60 clubs participating, and then in 2019 we had nearly 180. So it's just grown and grown and grown each year, and it's been absolutely brilliant to see how much interest and support there is from the wider football community for all of this work. In the meantime, we have launched 5 Football Welcomes community projects where we're working with 4 football club foundations and 1 county FA to really kind of, it's a pilot project, and it's to really see how football clubs, county FAs can work with other organisations in their communities to help make those communities more welcoming. And that's based on some really good work that's going on in Germany, or it's been going on in Germany over the last few years, where the majority of clubs in the top 2 men's divisions are involved in what they call community alliances. So it's different organisations within the community working together to welcome refugees and promote integration. So we've taken that model, adapted it to UK football structures, and we've got projects running in Middlesbrough, Birmingham with Aston Villa, Leicester, Doncaster, and Liverpool with Liverpool County FA, working with Liverpool FC, and Everton are also doing some really good work in Liverpool as well. And then the final part of the puzzle is that one of the issues immediately as soon as I started doing this work, and I've played football all my life. I know what it's like to be a girl playing football, to be a woman playing football, and I wasn't surprised to discover that it was like getting women's clubs involved and women and girls from refugee background involved was going to take a different approach from kind of our kind of standard approach, I guess. And so the FA generously funded are generously funding a women's football officer for the programme. So as part of that, we have produced a guide to engaging women and girls from refugee background in football. And we've run 4 training sessions so far this year, and we'll look at putting in a couple more dates for the rest of the year. And those training sessions and the guides are for football coaches, Amnesty activists, people working with refugees and people seeking asylum in whatever capacity, who'd like to think about how they could use football to welcome refugees and to help to create more welcoming communities. And I'll stop there.
Brilliant, thank you, Naomi. Well, you say you will stop there. We've got a question for you specifically, which is Christian asks, what have been your highlights of football welcomes? I think that's like throughout its history.
There've been so many, and the most important thing really is the feedback that we get from participants. So people who are refugees and seeking asylum, and hearing about their experiences of football welcomes. And in the very first year of it, there was a headline in the Bath Chronicle which said, was something like, Syrian refugees feel, and the quote was, feel very loved after a visit to Twerton Park with Bath City's football ground. And they put on like, they provided free tickets for the game and put on some food. And I think the children of the families who came along, like, sort of went and did some activities on the pitch afterwards. And that headline kind of summed up what it was all about, really. So that was really nice. It's that kind of thing. It's been brilliant when clubs have like really taken the initiative and put on like tournaments and matches. And you know, this year we had, thanks to some work that Bilal was doing with our local group in Sunderland, we had Sunderland organise a tournament, and then working with the local council, the university, refugee charities, they lit up, how many buildings was it, Bilal? Like
8 civic buildings, including 3 castles and a lighthouse. Yeah,
in Amnesty yellow. So you know, so things like that kind of like creativity is great to see. And also, just one last thing, through the Football Welcomes community projects, one example of how a club can kind of show that it's welcoming, and how it can show that it wants to work with refugee communities and like organisations, charities that are working with refugees and people seeking asylum. In Middlesbrough, for their Football Welcomes community project, one of the things they do is the coaches who run the project go to the like English drop-in classes that their sort of charity, refugee charity partner runs, and it's really nice for like a sense of familiarity. So the coaches go in their Middlesbrough kit, and the message is really strong, like, you know, Middlesbrough FC is here to welcome you and to support you and stand by your side. And it sounds kind of like a small thing, but the power of the badge, you know, football people talk about the power of the badge, and it's really, you know, that's not something to be underestimated at all. So I think Bilal's put a link in the chat to some of the Football Welcomes highlights, so do have a look at that. And if you have a Google around again, you'll see some other things that have happened.
Also, just a quick one, Sally Harris from Bath is on the call, who is the people that you're talking to. I was just wondering if I could broaden that out. Maybe Kevin, if you can talk about some of the highlights as well.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting. One thing to bear in mind is that because football is so big, when you're a football club, I think anything which exists within your local community is relevant to the football club. You know, if you have schools in your local community, they should be linked to the club. If you've got community centres, hospitals, they should be linked to the club. So the clubs, although there are professional football clubs, you know, the stuff you see on TV, every professional club has a community trust. So ours at Brentford, even though we're a small club, we have 50 full-time members of staff. We're funded several £1 million from the Premier League. So all of those community trusts and clubs should be trying to engage with everyone in the local community. So as an example of some of the things that we're doing, we're going to try and work with a local community sponsorship program. So if there are any in Ealing or Hounslow, we want to join those people who are welcoming local refugees and add something from the point of the club. We would join with Naomi and all the other clubs to try and do really positive comms, because one of the things, if you look at the research of an organisation called I'm trying to think, Sundakatwala, what are they called, Naomi?
British Future.
British Future.
British
So there's a lot of misinformation about refugees and asylum seekers. There are around a quarter of the population have good information and understand the positive contribution that all refugees play in all countries. There's about a quarter of people who have quite a negative view and are not the most pleasant of people. But around half the population are people who are swayed by what they read in the media. If they read negative stuff, their opinion becomes negative. If they read positive things, it becomes positive. So if we as football can send out a really truthful and positive image around the real lives of refugees and asylum seekers, it will change the narrative in society, and society will understand that, you know, these are people who have gone through the most unbelievable experiences that we are very lucky we haven't experienced, and actually we should be a lot more hospitable in the same way that we would like those people to be to us if we were in the same position. So I think that the pinnacle of the Premier League and the Championship, we have the platform to be able to send out those positive messages. There are around 40 players in the Premier League and Championship who are of a refugee background, and getting those players to speak out can be really, really powerful. And then if you go down to the other end of the club, for example, there are always jobs. So we deliver some participation sessions where young people from a refugee background play football. But if there are jobs going, whether it's stewarding or in catering or other parts of the club, we should be trying to connect so those young people have got a job, and then the club can do good in that way as well. So there are loads of aspects in the same way that any business can help. Go on, Naomi's got
amazing.
Yeah, I was just gonna sorry, just to jump in on that, like, Kevin, that is exactly what the Football Welcomes community projects are all about. It's really thinking about, like, what other organisations in your community can you work with, and thinking about you as the football club, what opportunities can you create for participants in your Football Welcomes project. So not just on football, so yes, coaching and refereeing, of course, definitely, but also, like, internships, whether it's, marketing, finance, I don't know, whatever you're thinking of a football club as a business, like, what else can you, how thinking about this in a really kind of holistic way. And there've been some really good examples of people, like, coming through the Football Welcomes program, doing coaching qualifications, and starting to build some experience and even into a career in that field. So it can have, like, a really positive impact beyond just the playing of the football once a week.
Mm-hmm. Comfort and Anwar, I'm not sure if you wanted to come in on any of that. Completely fine if you don't want to.
Yeah, just on the highlights, I think for me, the great thing about Fans for Diversity and the work we do with fans is that it's a campaign that exists, and we want to add lots of other great work onto the work of the campaign. So, working with bringing communities closer to fans and clubs, we get stadiums once a year, which we can utilise. And for example, at Bradford City, Leyton Orient, Cardiff, Blackburn, we've been offered the stadium for the day at Charlton. And what we've done is we've got community teams, we've got fan groups, but we've actually invited refugees, groups of teams that are planning tournaments, the power leagues across the country, to come and enjoy an experience to play in a stadium. And the only reason we got to know these groups, these individuals, is because of the work of Football Welcome. So because of the initiative, clubs are thinking, okay, where can I tap into this refugee community within my local city or town, which they probably didn't have as a network before. They tap into that. And then it's about the best clubs think about it and go, okay, this is great for a one-off event. What can we do all across the season? So it's been great to invite some of these teams to some of the events that we've done at Fans for Diversity and give people the opportunity to play in stadiums. And also, I've been to a few tournaments around the Football Welcomes project over the last 4 years, and I've actually met quite a few players which I've helped actually take to clubs in non-league, because I think sometimes with what Kevin was alluding to about the stigma attached to this space, actually, there's so many talented people that are involved in these projects, these teams, these tournaments. And for me, I always say to non-league football managers and even football league managers, go and watch, have an idea of who's there, because an opportunity could be created for a player who's good enough because he may have played or she may have played in their country of origin at a decent level. They've come here and almost their football career is stopped because of the current situation. So I've actually been able to give a couple of players a trial at non-league clubs that's been very, very successful. So for me, a project that started 4 years ago has actually enabled individuals to have a pathway into mainstream football pyramid in the UK, giving people the opportunity to watch football in stadiums across the country from Bath all the way to the Premier League. And I think sometimes the headline stats are great, X amount of groups have gone to games, but sometimes it's those individual stories that don't quite make the news, but I know of that's happened as a result of the campaign, and they've literally been life-changing. So for me, it's about continuing the great work and hopefully having an impact on so many more individual lives, and that's what it's all about for me.
Such amazing work there. Nice one, Anwar. Comfort?
Yeah, also I just wanted to add that we've also had the opportunities to go into stadium to watch games, and be the women's game that was played in Anfield, and it was really good because our women got to watch the game with their families and their friends, and these are opportunities that they would not normally get. Also, as as a growing team, another thing, and with my experience with the asylum system and currently working for an organization that support them, I think, just being able to support them, one-to-one as regards to questions they might have, that might not necessarily be, in line of football, but something troubling them that, that is making them not want to come to football. And one of the things that we had to make sure was available was reimbursing transportation. It could be as little as that, knowing, the have little or no income to survive on, and trying to get them to come down to the field to have fun. A lot of them are isolated. So just being able to make provisions for that has gone really, into a long way. We've just completed the FA Playmaker course. 10 of them engaged, participated really well. We had an amazing facilitator from the FA, and she's just, warmed the hearts of the women. And a lot of them want to go into coaching. A lot of them have been empowered to look into voluntary opportunities, which is really good. It's just that being able to empower them, whereby they're not focused on just the asylum process that they're going through, which, you and I can agree that it's quite a daunting process. I've been through it and I know. So, being able to shift their focus to something really positive, and, them looking up to wanting to volunteer in the community, wanting to do more, either with football or just going out there and being, amazing people that they are, and just using their skills that has kind of been isolated with them for a very long time is just amazing. And being able to offer them is just good. And, with the knowledge that I have also in terms of referrals to also support them through their asylum case, I think it's just amazing that we're able to offer them that as minimum.
Amazing, right? Football as a starting off point and as a conduit is phenomenal. So I want to move on to a question specifically for Kevin, but then I'll open it up as well because there's broad themes here. So hi Kevin, congrats to Brentford. I'm a Rotherham United fan, so commiserations to us. Mm-hmm. But I wondered how any of the clubs have navigated any pushback from fans and staff members about getting involved with football welcomes, and that comes from Liz. So about pushback from fans.
It's interesting, actually. I think this is something that we actually, it's linked to a point I was about to make. I think it's something we fear is going to happen. but actually I've had very little experience of it. So while I was at the FA, the only time you saw that pushback was actually when you put something on Twitter. You might get 1,000 likes and you might get 1 or 2 comments from, you would always get a few trolls like that on Twitter. No matter, you could put a picture of a cheese sandwich and there'll be someone that doesn't like it. And I find that actually what the point I was going to make was that fans are actually a real asset. So if you look at the breadth and the diversity of fans, you've got people from every walk of life in a football stadium or watching it on TV. And actually there are people there, some who are informed and some who are not, who could be massive supporters of some of the work we do. So actually I feel it's our responsibility to try and educate them and give them an opportunity. So Anwar and Naomi will know in Germany, there are some Bundesliga clubs who have upskilled and informed some of their fans, and some of the fan groups have got together and done really, really positive work, both around refugees and other social impact projects, and it would be really and had more genuine impact than a lot of the clubs, because the clubs are businesses and they're sometimes restricted in the things they can do. But actually the pushback internally at the FA, there was very little pushback, and Brentford as well. Actually, it's more people not quite knowing how they can be involved. People are really, really supportive of both supporting refugees and EDI in general. I think the gap is more educating people as to how they can help. Some people think that their role or they themselves are too small a person in part of this bigger picture, but actually everyone can play their part, and it's probably our responsibility to give them the opportunity to get involved.
Amazing. Naomi, can I bring you in on that? You're on mute, sorry.
Sorry. Am I off mute now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. So that's a really good question, and it was one that came up when we were coming up with the idea for football welcomes. What would be the reaction from fans? And there were quite a few people, like I said at the beginning, who who really weren't sure this was going to work because they were worried. They thought clubs were going to be worried about backlash from their fans. What we experienced was absolutely the opposite of that, and we've had more and more clubs joining each year to take part in the Football Welcomes Weekend. We're seeing more and more clubs and county FAs setting up like ongoing projects and programs with refugees in their communities, and where I've heard a couple of stories I've heard where there's been a little bit of a backlash. One club got in touch and said, we've had a few comments on social media, and what should we do? And we had a chat, and I was worried that it might make them think maybe we should be a bit quieter about the fact that we're doing this work. And their reaction was, this just proves how important it is to do this work, and it sort of made them even more committed to it. So so that is exactly the right reaction to have, and so I think there are some really good examples as well of where fans have been involved in football welcomes. So at Doncaster Rovers, they do I'm not sure how often it happens, it might be monthly, but they do walk to the stadium as part of their sort of community fitness drives for fans to meet up along the way to the stadium. And for football welcomes, they made sure that they linked up with refugee organisations and made sure that refugees were involved in that walk to the stadium. And that's something that could happen every month. It doesn't have to just be for football welcomes. Some clubs have done boot drives as well. So if they're running a project for refugees, one of the issues can be about having appropriate kit to play in, and so some clubs have done asked fans to donate good quality boots that they don't use anymore, that can then they can distribute to their participants. So there are lots and lots of different ways that fans can be involved, and we've seen some really positive responses both from clubs where they have had negative comments and from fans themselves.
Amazing. So, Anwar, can I bring you in as well? But to talk broadly about a fan's perspective, but then to also talk about this next question as well, which I think is quite interesting, especially as we're going through the Euros right now, and that's about sort of country on country. So, so what would you like to see at the Euros to celebrate players with a refugee background? So that's from Christian. So, please talk about broader France perspective and your reaction to the working with refugees, as well as like what can we see from the Euros to celebrate refugee stories?
It's a good question, and I think one thing I'd like to see in any subject, and especially anything associated to equality and diversity and inclusion, is a balance, because I don't think we have a balance. If you think about what our current generation, our younger generation, the previous generation, what have they heard? Where is their information that they're receiving around refugees and asylum seekers? You know, you have to question that. And where is the balance? And I think the Euros, I think some current players, some real success stories enable us to give that balance. And I think when you hear about these stories and you actually understand the journey that some people have been to then get to a point where they're playing for their country in a European Championship where the world is watching, I think it just highlights something that people would have no reason of learning. So for me, it's about giving everything a balance. And I don't think this subject has been given that balance over the last 2 decades. That's why, you know, an initiative like this is so important. And for me, I think it's important that fans do have this conversation. Some might not be comfortable because of change. Some might be a little bit fearful. But if we do the same things and ignore these initiatives and not support them, then nothing's going to change. So for me, when clubs actively support this work, even that conversation, even the Twitter debates and the conversations fans have on the terraces, what are we doing this for? What's all this about? Why are we bringing this into football? What's politics got to do with football? All those sorts of conversations are, I think, good, because with football clubs and especially football fans, you've got a minority that get it. You've got a minority that don't care. But for me, it's that critical mass that can really affect social change. And if we can affect that critical mass with positive messaging, I think that will contribute towards positive change. And I think that's what Football Welcomes is doing. And I think we need to continue to add balance in everything that we do. Because for me, there are some subjects, especially linked to inclusion, that there's never been a balance. And for me, it's about giving and delivering that balance of that narrative to the critical mass.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And then I just wanted, because we're just coming to the end, but just before we do, I just wanted to sort of, there's a question here, I mean, almost specifically for Comfort, and maybe Naomi can pitch in as well. But so we are a very new refugee team, just started in Milton Keynes. Do the panel have any suggestion on how we can develop collaboration to develop the program? Comfort, I think that's pitched at you with your experience in Liverpool. What do you reckon to it?
I think one of the first things that I did was to, get a person that has an understanding of football and, everything that it entails in terms of, having a team, whether it's a coach, where the training place is going to be, that will be accessible to, to the players that you want to get into the team. So one of the things I did was ensure that the meeting place, the field was very close to the IAs, because those were the women that I really wanted to target because they were more isolated. So IAs, initial accommodation, where the Home Office would, put the women before they get dispersed to, different parts of the country. So in Liverpool, we have 3 initial accommodations, which is Bailey Court, Greenbank, and Sion's House. And I wanted it to be central so that the women are able to access it. It could be them just walking down or getting at least a bus. So that was another thing. And again, obviously, I work for an organization that provides casework support and all this amazing support for women seeking asylum and refugee women, whether be it move home support. So it was easy for me. I've gone who's worked as an outreach worker, now advocacy policy officer, to bring my experience, because, you know, it's good for you to have someone who has an understanding of the asylum process also, to help you, so that when question comes up, when you don't see a player in the field, you could, when you ring them and they tell you what they're going through, you're able to know the support groups in your area that can support. So we have different charity organizations in Liverpool that can give, you know, asylum support, refugee support, move on support. So having the understanding of all these organizations and government bodies that can help, you know, it's really good, because then when they come to the field of play, you're able to, they're able to enjoy the game of football, but then also you're able to support them through that they're going through. And if they're already refugees, move on support is another daunting thing. So it's not just seeking asylum and being granted status. When they get their status, they also still need that support to be able to adapt into the community, whether it's by getting jobs or whether it's sorting out universal credits. So just make sure you have all those people, you know, around you, that when you see, you're able to kind of like see them the whole journey and at the same time enjoying football.
Wonderful. Thank you, Comfort. And I think 1 minute over time. I think on that we'll probably call draw this to an end. I want to thank all of our panelists for coming and your brilliant insights on the game. I want to thank everyone who asked a question. Thank you for that. They were really rich questions. I want to thank everyone who came as well. Is really important. This has been being recorded. It will be available on the National Football Museum's website, and I think their Facebook immediately after this. They'll also be using clips here and there. So do please like and share and promote it. And the YouTube will also be it'll also be on YouTube as well. And what I want to do now is just let you get off and enjoy the Netherlands-Austria game, because I know that's what I'm going to be doing. Thanks for coming, everyone, and see you later.